Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another third stimulus check unemployment benefits extension update. So today's update is going to be a little bit different because in today's update, I want to talk about the free rental assistance program that was actually recently approved. Technically, it was actually approved inside of the second stimulus package. However, it took many states kind of some time to be able to start rolling it out. In fact, some states haven't actually even started it yet, so it's still even considered early. And then this program was technically also once again approved in the third stimulus package, but it was just further extended and funded. So I guess more money is always it's always better to have a lot more money. But today's update is really going to be talking about the free rental assistance program because I know there were a lot of people that were kind of wondering about that, about how it works, how to physically get on it, how to qualify for it, and then all of the specific details. Because the really great news, and I think it's important to maybe just start off, is that pretty much more or less almost every single state will be doing this program just because it was a program that was approved on the federal level. However, with that being said, only certain states have actually physically started the program, and there's also a lot of states that have kind of kept a lot of information much more like down low and low key, so it could be a little bit harder to find information depending on where you're currently from. But in today's update, I think the great news is that eventually most of the states should eventually be doing this program, or maybe have actually already started. In fact, there's actually a lot of states that have either already started this program, and there's actually also interestingly a lot of states that have kind of opened up applications for this program, but then they ended up actually closing applications for this program. So we're kind of just waiting around for more information for them to hopefully reopen up applications once again. So it really just varies across every single state about how this works. But we're going to talk about everything in today's update. So with that being said, as always, maybe before we begin, remember to smash the like button, especially since we're at least able to talk about an actual approved program right now. So not, something in a potential for it, but an actual approved program that's going on. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification button if you're interested in videos similar to this, especially if we do have other future updates about this, or really honestly just a lot of government support programs that can potentially put extra money inside our pockets, especially during a time of much need. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, thoughts about honestly just anything at all. Always great to say hi to familiar and new faces. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So the free rental assistance program that was already approved technically again in the second stimulus package, but further extended in the third stimulus package, I believe is that it was supposed to allocate about $25 billion to basically help pay for people's rent. Now, this also technically extends even beyond rent because they're also doing a lot of programs that beyond just on top of the rental assistance, that's going to potentially also cover a lot of other parts of people's rent. So for example, like heating, energy, gas bills, and then I believe further on later on they added even more funding. So I believe the total amount that they currently have for this program across the country right now is about $45 billion. This comes directly from the government treasury website, so it's as official as it possibly can as a resource. But the general idea is that every single state is going to be doing it a little bit differently. So I think the big thing is that if you're looking for the most accurate information, you probably have to find it directly from your state's government website, which we're going to talk about in a little bit later. But the universal part that applies to almost every single person across every single state is really the first part, is really about the eligibility. So if you're looking to potentially see whether or not you're actually physically eligible and qualified to get onto this program, I believe there's really only 3 specific requirements that's stated. The first requirement is that you have to have been someone that's either currently unemployed, and because we happen to be an unemployment channel after all, or at least certainly we have a huge focus on unemployment, there's probably a lot of you guys that happen to be unemployed, or you have to have been someone that has experienced some kind of significant financial hardship. So even if maybe you are not on unemployment, if you can basically demonstrate that you are going through some kind of massive financial need, then this could potentially apply to you. The second requirement is that you have to be someone that's basically at the potential risk of homelessness or essentially being evicted. And then the third and final one, and this one's a little bit harder to prove, but we're going to talk a little bit how to do it a little bit later. But it's basically that you have to have had a household income at or below 80% of the heir's median salary. So this is a little bit tricky because the idea is that you either have to be relatively poor, especially maybe if you've lost your job but living in a relatively richer neighborhood, or probably even more common, and I guess it's a little bit sad, but at least hopefully this does help to cover up, and at least there's some kind of relief, is that you basically have to be someone that's relatively really poor or going through something really financially tight, and in a poor neighborhood. So in other words, you're basically struggling even more financially harder in a neighborhood of a lot of other people that are also struggling relatively hard. Now, I believe that if you are able to qualify for this program and get onto it and successfully run through the application process, it's going to potentially give you guys free rent, which can be a massive significant amount of money, especially if you're from an area with high cost of living, for basically up to 12 months. And it's going to add on an additional 3 months if your current financial situation continues. So essentially is that they're hoping to give you up to 12 months and then an additional 3 months depending on how your financial situation changes and whether or not it's needed. If all of these things apply for you, then you can potentially now start to apply for it. Now, keep in mind, as we kind of have just mentioned, is that only specific states have opened up applications. I believe about half of this country. If I had to guess, I believe about only half of this country has opened up applications. So at least the great news is that there's a pretty high probability, hopefully your state has already started up. But if that becomes the case, then what you're pretty much going to need in order to prepare to potentially apply for this program is that the first thing is that you're going to need to have something to show your income, or in many cases, I guess you could even say your lack of income. So the general idea is that the best document that you could probably use for this would probably either be your classic tax return, or interestingly enough, the unemployment letter that you received when you qualified for unemployment, if you were someone that qualified for unemployment, just because I think, it's fair to say is that if you were unemployed at some point last year, there was probably some level of financial hardship that was going on. And then the second thing that you really need is pretty much just your actual bill. So the actual rent bill that shows how much you're paying for rent, or even if you even have this, the actual eviction notice. If you are someone that's literally on the verge of eviction, one or the other. You will probably need some kind of ID, so essentially your passport or your just regular driver's license or state ID. And then I think beyond this is really just the actual application. Now, the thing is with the application is that the application to get onto this, it really will vary across different states. And in some cases, it might even vary across different cities. So because there is relatively some level of variety across different states, I would probably say is that if you're looking for the most accurate information, probably the best place, honestly, really would be just the classic Google. I would probably go to Google up and type in basically rent assistance and then your state. So for example, rent assistance Pennsylvania, rent assistance ... You could also looking into typing rent assistance and then your city. So for example, rent assistance Philly, rent assistance LA, rent assistance Atlanta. In fact, actually, because I know certain states have actually recently just opened up their application, or there's also a lot of states that have actually they opened up applications, then they kind of filled up, and then they closed down applications, and then they kind of reopened up applications. I believe Atlanta just recently reopened up applications, so if you happen to by any chance be in Atlanta, Georgia, I believe that this could potentially apply to you again if you're able to qualify for everything that we kind of just mentioned. But I think the general idea is that considering the fact that for most people, rent happens to be the highest cost of expense for the majority of us, especially if you're from a very high cost of living area, it's probably something pretty worth it to at least attempt to apply, assuming that you come from a state that has officially opened up applications. So I would probably say the best bet is really to maybe look up information, basically rent assistance and then your state, rent assistance in your city, or basically stuff that comes directly from the housing department inside of your specific state or even your specific city, depending on how the area that you currently live in is kind of running the program. But beyond that's pretty much what I really just wanted to cover in today's update. So hopefully something just fresh and brand new that you guys can potentially look into. If you guys found something insightful, maybe as always consider smashing the like button and subscribing and hitting the bell notification for similar videos like this. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, thoughts about honestly just really anything at all. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, stay well, stay strong, and hopefully we can finally eventually get through this all together, especially because the great news is we are at least now starting to see a lot of recovery inside of our country. So that is the relatively brighter and more promising, certainly compared to most of last year. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, stay well, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.